Dom. Machine gun. Laser. Laser level 2.
High Frequency Bandwidth is a band which is me and Alex Paterson, who's a DJ and producer and writer. Most of the programming and mixing side of stuff is me, and Alex has a huge input into the project in terms of sonics, and he's obviously a great DJ and has got great knowledge of music, and that's essentially how it started. I started off working with Alex in his other band, which is called The Orb, and we had another band together before we started High Frequency Bandwidth. And then when we started the first High Frequency Bandwidth album, as we got about halfway through that whole process, it was around about the time where I was really looking for other projects to do that were sync projects or music to picture, music to video, and had really started getting interested in sort of music that was getting featured on video games. That was becoming an area that was starting to use some really interesting music, and the technology involved in it as well was allowing people to get far away from that kind of 80s, 90s idea of video game music, and we started to become seriously cinematic. And I love writing music to picture, and was looking to see if there was a way to get into doing music for video games. And completely out of the blue, Dylan Cuthbert got in touch with us. He runs a company called PixelJunk in Kyoto in Japan, and asked if he could license some music for a game that he was putting into development called Shooter. I sent him over some tracks that Alex and I were working on, which they really liked, and it just seemed a perfect opportunity to take that material and just to go one step further than just licensing the tracks, so that loops from those tracks have just played ad infinitum, and to get into that world of dynamic music for video games. So we looked at ways of doing that and worked really closely with them, and came up with the soundtrack to Shooter, the first Shooter game. And it just went down extremely well. We got nominated for a BAFTA for Best Original Soundtrack for it, which completely blew us away as our first soundtrack for a game. And since then we've done a total of 3 soundtracks now for PixelJunk, and the last one is Sidescroller, which has grown out of the 2 original Shooter concepts. And I think I've got a few of the tracks here that have got a lot of stuff from FXpansion in them. This track's called Dog Is No Hero, which is features on the Sidescroller soundtrack, which is going to be on the album coming out. And this is a nice example of a groove that started off in BFD originally as a live groove, and actually came together through several different drum takes. And although, as you can probably see from the MIDI in the original BFD performance, this was originally all played live, and the muted parts, as they've come out here, ended up being hived off onto other electronic sounds or occasionally other drum kits, but BFD certainly created the central vibe for it. The sound of this Orange County snare over here, with a dub delay on it, just absolutely worked brilliantly. So this is just the drum track. Just here. What I tend to do is to always print my drums out as audio after I program them. I think mostly it's, for me, it's just a kind of safety and just the knowledge that the groove is set down in audio and isn't going to budge around afterwards. You notice obviously I've taken out this BFD drum tom fill here. Because within the original track it was a little busy. If I take it out again, you can hear that section. Actually, one of the things that I've started doing with BFD in particular is just trying, particularly when I'm layering it up with a lot of different drums, is to each one of the separate drums in the mixer here comes out to a different auxiliary, and then each auxiliary within BFD comes out on a separate mono or stereo output, which is then bus within Logic, and those come in on auxiliaries on each of my actual audio tracks. There's not that much processing on these, but I tend to process each drum separately and then bus each one off, as in here, to an auxiliary for processing my drums. In this case I've got a compressor on it. Quite often I'll use a parallel compressor as well, just to add a bit of extra weight behind the drums and fade that in afterwards. I was hoping to show you something that had a lot more processing, but it's one of those nice occasions actually where I didn't need to use very much. I think a transient designer on the snare, which just gives it a bit more thwack up front, and just a little bit of EQ on each one of the drums and some reverbs. In this case, bus 9 is my parallel compressor, where I'm using this Audio Damage Rough Rider here to really smack each one of those drums, and that's just loaded up behind the main drum bus, and mixed in with my scratch channel over here, which is just us doing some vinyl scratching. And then I've used the drum track also, I think this is actually probably from the hi-hat track, to gate the guitars that are overdubbed on there. From there. I mean, in this case, I've actually used the real live elements from BFD that were kind of essential to keeping that driving. Are just actually the snare, the BFD snare, toms, and overhead, and kick, which is just this part of the drum kit. And those are overlaid with a whole bunch of other sample drums and a sequential circuits kit. And that's the delay and a loop, which is actually from a piece of vinyl. And the sequential circuits is something that we sampled earlier from a hired sequential circuits drum kit.